You're listening to Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk. Each week, your host, Polly Requa, interviews veterinarians and individuals in the pet industry from across the nation answering pet questions. Bark and Wag podcast is produced weekly for your enjoyment, and show notes can be found at barkandwag.com under the podcast tab. That's BARKNWAG.com. Please remember to subscribe to Bark and Wag 15-Minute Vet Talk.
Thank you for listening to Bark and Wag 15-Minute Vet Talk. Bark and Wag is dedicated to protecting our dogs through advocacy, education, and supporting like-minded dog lovers by selling custom pet products. Saving lives by selling collars, scrunchies, and swag. Please check out Bark and Wag's website, barkandwag.com. That's BARKNWAG.com to see the awesome merchandise. Bark and Wag collars and leashes, collar covers, and decorative bandanas are perfect for your pooch. For the owner of the house, we have t-shirts, sweatshirts, long sleeve shirts, hats, and even coasters. We are expanding monthly, so be sure to check back. We love pooch ideas for podcasts and merchandise too, so send an email to polly@barkandwag.com with your suggestions.
Welcome to Bark and Wag 15-Minute Vet Talk. I'm your host, Polly Requa. Today we're talking to Cristi Eckert, owner of Natural Pet Wellness. Hi, Cristi.
Hi, how are you?
Great. Thank you for coming back on the podcast. I wanted to have you back to discuss essential oils for pets.
Thank you. I'm excited to be back and to discuss this more.
Okay, so first, tell me about the products that you use that are available for pets.
Yeah, absolutely. I specifically use the Young Living oils. Like we talked about earlier, for me, they give me the confidence knowing they have a seed to seal promise. They're 100% therapeutic grade. So for me, it's the only oils I will ever use on an animal. But the products they have available, they're the only oil company that has a specific animal line of oils. It's called Animal Scents, SCENTS, Scents.
Okay.
And they have 9 different products for animals. And these are oil blends that they've put together to address the specific needs that pets would have. Not to say that you couldn't do your own combinations or use single oils like lavender or peppermint or things like that. You could definitely use single oils, and I use single oils all the time. But these ones are specifically tailor-made, and they're also already diluted to where they're not a full-strength oil to use on your pet. And for example, one of the oils is called TOA, and it's for grief, trauma, agitation. It's an emotional support for your pet. So if you have a rescue dog or if you have a dog that has anxiety, this would be a great oil to use on your pet. They have other, in the same Animal Scents line, they have an ointment that you could put on a cut or a scrape. They make an Animal Scents shampoo. It smells good. It is safe to use as a shampoo, and you know your dog when you're using it. Your dog or cat is going to reap the benefits of having oils in their shampoo as well as having a shampoo that doesn't have parabens and all these other chemicals in it.
Okay. So what type of essential oil would you use if your dog is showing signs of arthritis?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this oil is not part of the Animal Scents line. It is called Copaiba, and we use it on our dog for his arthritis, his inflammation, pain. And we've seen great results using this. It is a mild oil, and it's a great oil to use directly, or you can dilute it. And that's just an example of one of the oils that could be used to help with.
Okay, so this is really great because what I can do is put on my website that if you have any questions for ailments that your dog has, Cristi could come back on the podcast and talk about what essential oils would work for that ailment. I guess the other big question I have, how do you know if essential oils are safe? I mean, obviously Young Living, as you talked about in the last podcast, really pays attention to making sure everything is up to par. But if you happen to be at Walmart and see essential oils, how do you know if it's safe for your pet? Is there a label that goes on an essential oil, or, what are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question. Essential oils fall into 4 categories. There's grades A, B, C, and D. Grade A is therapeutic grade. It's made from organically grown plants. It's distilled at low temperatures so that it doesn't break down a lot of the components of the plant. Grade B is food grade. It may contain synthetics, pesticides, fertilizers, chemical extenders, or carrier oils. Grade C is considered a perfume. They often contain adulterating chemicals. They usually use solvents like hexane to gain higher yield of oil per harvest. Keep in mind, solvents can be cancerous, and they're also in many store-bought oils. They can also dilute 80 to 95% with alcohol. And grade D is floral water. This is aromatic only. It's usually a byproduct of grade A distillation. So Young Living falls into the grade A category, but there's a lot of oils that when you look at them, they're going to show that they're pure therapeutic grade. And something to keep in mind is that the FDA, for a bottle to be labeled pure, it only needs to contain 5% of that essential oil.
Oh, wow.
So I think it comes back to doing a little research on your part or your homework to make sure that when you pick up a bottle of oil at a store, where did it come from? Do they have their own plants? Where did they get their oils from? Do they buy those oils from other companies and then put them in the bottle? Do they have reviews online where people have used the oils and had negative effects? So I don't need to do that type of research because I know Young Living is already checked all those boxes for me of safety.
Sure. Right. And I guess the other question is, how do you apply essential oil to your dog? Do you put it on their paw? Do you put it on the actual shoulder that's hurting? Do you, like CBD, put it in their mouth? I mean, how do you apply essential oil to a dog?
You've covered a lot of them there. So for oils, there's different ways. You can diffuse it, which is you buy a diffuser. You can buy a diffuser anywhere nowadays. And it's a water-based diffuser. So you fill the container with water and you put 3 to 5 drops of your favorite oil. And it's going to diffuse as a mist into the room.
And that helps a dog?
That helps a dog. So if you think about it, a dog has over 300 million smell detecting cells in their nose. A human has 5 million. A dog has 300 million. So by putting this in the air, just the dog, you've heard of aromatherapy, right?
Sure.
Just by smelling it, it's going to change the chemical in your brain or in their brain it alters a chemical in your brain to process it at a cellular level, kind of that blood-brain barrier thing. So that's diffusing. You put it in the air. It is still very beneficial, especially if you're maybe like a calming oil. You want it kind of diffuse the whole room. It's great to diffuse also. Like if you like candles, I used to love candles, and I still do. I buy the fake ones that have the little flame that wiggles, right?
Yeah.
But there's no
it
smell.
at Christmas.
Yeah, but there's no smell needed to associate with that. And I have a cat, and one of my biggest fears was that this cat was going to walk past a candle. He's a fluffy cat,
Okay.
and his tail's going to catch on fire. He's going to hit the drapes and poof, right? Like, I just don't like candles around animals.
Okay.
And then as I did my research, a lot of candles have those chemicals in them, right? That it's not a really good smell to put out, like Febreze or other like Lysols, or those are just name brands, but chemicals that you can spray that cover up odors. Mm-hmm. Those aren't a natural based smell solution. And now that you know your dog has 300 million cells in their nose that are working to smell, that bombardment is really hard for them to take in. So if you put a diffuser, it gives you the pleasant aroma that you might be wanting, and then it also has the emotional support benefit. You can apply oils, so there's diffusing, Another way is you can directly apply oils to your pet. There's a couple of ways you want to do this. You want to have your dog or cat help you pick the oil. So, for example, I know that sounds silly, but they could even smell it through the lid almost, right? Okay. So we'll use Freddie my dog Freddie, who's 14 with his arthritis. I wanted to give him an oil that would support that for him. And I took the lid off and I let him smell the bottle of oil. And he sniffed it and then he licked it. He loved it. He's like, this is something I need and it's good for me. Other times I've had an oil that maybe I wanted to diffuse or thought that he needed, like he ate something in the yard and had an upset stomach. And I wanted to see if he would like the peppermint, right? He turned his head away and he actually walked away. He's like, I don't like that one. So the animal will tell you if it's something they like. And if they stay in the space with it, same thing with diffusing, you want to make sure that your animal has a way to leave the room if they don't like the smell of the oil you've picked for them. But
interesting.
Yeah, just give them an out, especially with cats. You don't want to force them to be around an oil. But you can have them help you pick this oil. You find the oil that you think is going to help with the needs they have. And if it's a large dog, you could put a few drops of the oil in the palm of your hand. You rub your hands together and you run it along their spine on their back. I would not put oils on their feet because they can rub their eyes or...
Oh, yeah.
So, and it's maybe a little too close to where they would smell. But if it's on their back, your spinal meridian along your back is a great way to diffuse or for your body to spread these oils out evenly to where they need to go. And a pet's fur acts like a wick. So by putting this oil, even though you've rubbed it through your hands and you're just lightly brushing it along their back, it's going to pull down through that fur into that skin and into where it's going to do the best good for the pet. You could, if you have a smaller dog or a cat, you should really dilute any oil you're going to use. So there's different dilution rates, and I'm happy to answer that question if somebody wants to send me an email. But there's different dilution rates. You just don't want to use full strength oil on small dogs or cats.
Okay.
But on a larger dog or a dog that is familiar with essential oils and you know the result, you can absolutely use full strength.
Okay. So how do people get a hold of you if they're interested in learning more about essential oils?
Yeah, the best place at this time to get a hold of me is through my email, and that's naturalpetwellnessinfo@gmail.com.
Great. Well, I would love to have you on the podcast, and I would love for my listeners to send an email to Polly at barknwag.com with any questions you have regarding essential oils, because I will have Cristi back on the podcast to discuss your questions. So thank you again and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you so much. You as well.
Thank you for listening to Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll pass along our web address, www.barkandwag.com, to your friends and other pet owners. Have a pressing question for a veterinarian? Ask your question at barkandwag.com under the podcast tab. This has been a KFR production. Join us next time for another edition of Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk.